satisfied with this presentation? Is discussion fine? Any questions? Please feel free to ask. Go ahead. Maybe Albert.
Yes. First question to your presentation was very nice, very interesting. As I understand it right, design simple solution for this handcraftsman. Right?
Yes.
But there is, for production it's clear, but if you make the outcome 10 times higher, is the market big enough to take all this? Because otherwise the price is going down.
Well, there's a huge market for this glass bangles. You see, but people are looking for the craft bangles, but as they are not getting as the market is not having the products from those cottage industries, so people are taking the machine-made products, but they are not happy with the machine-made bangles because the craft has a different essence, you see. So, they are just depending on the machine-made products. So, but they have huge dissatisfaction on the machine-made products. Same with the bell metal and the brass. I come from the state of Assam, where we have a very strong tradition of bell metal and brass manufactured products, mainly the utensils. But because we are not getting the crafted items, we are depending on the machine-made products. But we are not happy.
Okay.
So there is no problem of demand. Demand is very huge. Demand is very
It's a good situation.
Yeah, it's a good situation.
But it's also interesting to interject here, correlation between the talk of your student, I think, right, with the coils. It's a sort of similar process, and they are heavily relying on precision and no faulty production. And here, they really love basically faulty production as a sign of true craftsmanship. So
Yes.
it's a really interesting connotation here that we are working in two different contexts culturally,
Absolutely.
and still have a large turnout and turnover of these products. So it's
Interesting.
I have a question for the first presenter. But I didn't understand what are the input the project manager will need to feed the system once, also to know if the project has a chance to be successful or not.
They would need to complete an entry like one of those rows in the matrix, so they'd have to assign numerical scores to things like urgency and whatever, and then it would be presented every node on the input layer correlates directly to one of those elements in that vector, and once the neural network is trained, then whether or not the final node lights up or not will tell you whether or not the network thinks that it'll be successful or not. What's going on under the hood there is completely inscrutable, because that's the problem with neural networks is you've got a classifier and it works, but what's going on under the hood is a bit of a mystery. And when they sort of started to move towards what they call deep learning now, and you've got these multiple layers, the thought was, each of these layers is going to correspond to some sort of like high-level feature in the data set, and then it turns out that that's not really true at all, and they correspond to really weird like combinations of input values, and that I think is an area of really big research to try and understand or be able to describe rather to humans what's going on in these classifiers, because we're starting to use them more and more, but they're becoming less inscrutable. We can describe the data going in, we can measure the performance of the classifier coming out, but the thought process, if you want to use such a loaded term, that's going on is
how much bias is in there?
You mean human bias? Well, in this particular case, quite a lot, because some of those fields are numerical. It's still a person who's come up with it. Unless it's like a real standardization of what means urgent and so on, it's going to be flawed. So that's definitely an issue. We're more interested in the process than in creating something, to be honest, actually usable by project managers, because this was more of an IT master's, less of a engineering masters or a product management masters or anything like that. So it was what we considered, it was just the problem domain, like the story for the system that was being developed. So yes, absolutely a shortcoming.
And a follow-up question. Could you determine which inputs were not relevant, or is it not possible?
That is a great question. No, not just which ones are relevant or not relevant, not by itself, but there could be work done to that. And also another interesting assumption with this approach is you're kind of assuming that each of the input vectors, each of the nodes on the input layer and corresponding entries in the row vector, you're assuming that they're independent variables, and of course they're not, because you're going to see that like a project that's got a huge budget is probably also going to have other figures that are tied to that. So there's a coupling between those input fields, which is not measured really. So yes, some of them will be not relevant, and some of them are actually aspects of some larger. So 3 input nodes or so might correspond to one actual thing that's the important thing that you should be measuring, but is being reflected in 3 other attributes. So yes, that's also an issue. So yes, it is possible to determine which ones aren't, but not with the system as it is. That would be extra work that would need to be done. But there's a further issue that they're actually, the inputs are coupled, and the assumption is that they're independent when they're not.
Directly to that, if I understood it right, the outcome of the neural network is yes or no.
Yes, it's a binary classification problem, yeah.
And it is always a view in the past, right?
Yeah, so
So what, as a project manager of great projects, what is the benefit for me? Normally, I have a feeling if it was a good project or not a good project.
maybe it's not for the great project managers. Maybe it's to lift up the not great project managers to be closer to that average.
Can I also make a forecast where I have to pay attention to which parameters? Is it possible?
Not this system as it is, but again, with some work, it could be turned into that. I don't think the student will pick this up for a PhD study, but it would be a valid direction. But definitely not as it is. It's very completely backwards facing.
I'm also questioning for all of the 5 of you. Because I look at when you are dealing with this data, most of the data is unstructured. I mean, for a project, every project is different.
Yes.
For car, passenger car, scenarios are different. So when, can you reflect on one question? How can you structure the unstructured data? Otherwise, machine learning doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just
Well, I can tie into one of the other presentations where she was speaking about a semantic analysis of the questionnaire, the unstructured data. So for textual data, there techniques exist. So you can, you've got this free-form text, and then you can take the individual words there, and you can do stemming and lemmatization, where you basically try and get into their root form. So like swimming and swum and all of the variations become just swim. Try and get everything to like its root concept, and then try and filter out, homonyms, the opposite things, that different descriptions for the same concept, and then map that onto an ontology, and then work with that from that point. So you'll lose information in that sort of pre-processing phase, but hopefully you'll capture still the essence of it. But I think we're still a long way from really understanding unstructured data. I mean, I looked at my advertising preferences on Google, and Google thinks that I'm interested in like paper doll, and that like there's nothing in my data that says that. And in fact, it wasn't even phrased like paper doll. It was phrased like as a verb phrase, just some completely meaningless things. There's a lot of garbage going on, but if the essence can be captured, then it might be good enough, pragmatic.
But that relates to the story of the father discovering the pregnancy of his daughter. Right?
Oh yeah, Walmart or something like that.
This goes back to a very important research, like protocol analysis in design research in many years, for many years. The purpose is the same, it's to structure unstructured data. What I can see, like for questionnaire design, for your sensor sensor system design, I think it's all the same question.
With the sensor design, I think in Industry 4.0 context, there is some other questions. These data contain knowledge about the product, and they contain knowledge. The machine maker wants to have the data from the machine user, but the machine user do not want to give him this data because this is a very important key knowledge of his process. This is a very complicated process, and they earn a lot of money with this product. And this was one of the biggest problems that we get trust between these two, because if the machine maker, the producer of the machine, get this data from one client, then he can transfer this knowledge to other customers, and that is not
No more independence.
In your example here, do you have a model for that machine? Like how the motors or gears or whatever happens inside it, so you can sort of relate the data to some physics-based models, maybe used when developing the machine or something.
So most times, of course, this data, the physics behind it, that has to come from the product developer because he has years of experience in it. But still, they rely on many parts which they buy from other companies as well. Like for example, they don't produce their own electric engines for the wire feed, so they buy those, and so they don't have the physical understanding of it, but they still try to understand it to develop models for it. So that's where you can see that there's a big need of communication and collaboration between all the value chain, because it's almost impossible for them for each part or element to develop a tool or to understand the physics behind it.
And the key point is this company, for example, is for this special aspect, making the steel springs. World class, leading class, and these machines are more everywhere. But I say most of the things, or a lot of the things what happens in the machine, they do not understand. That is internal knowledge of some guys or some. They have no explicit knowledge for that. And this very often, as a researcher, we have a completely wrong understanding what happened there. As I told it in the other session, 80–90% of the decisions of this that this machine works is coming out of feeling and so on. And they cannot explain it. They cannot explain.
This is
This is
the good part, because in your presentation that came out like this, you know, because where's the worker, you called it the worker in your presentation, like he has so much tacit information and knowledge about it. And there you go, you're going to classify it, but then already having two workers, classifying something what is wrong or good can be so biased and so like out of place. And how can you do that? How can you manage it towards a VR model, for example? Because this is what everybody wants, right? Can I create a virtual model with all the physics and everything in place?
It's not possible.
It's impossible, right?
It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's impossible.
But that's why I love the talk of the India person. Yeah, you from your university, or so it's so crucial to understand the potential you have as a human being linked to the machine. And I don't think we should lose that.
Yeah.
You know, it's,
You can extract more information. This is possible.
yeah.
But what you say, a complete virtual physical model of such a machine is not possible. It's not possible because there is, or in the next 100 years, not possible because this is so the details matter and
it's also
the
how you look at
complexity
it,
of
right?
it.
Like, what kind of imperfection? Like, I really love perfection, but there's no perfection whatsoever. So what am I looking at here all the time? It's interesting.
For example, I gave you an example because I'm relatively deep in that. You cannot believe it. They make springs, complicated springs, and they use wire. When the wire is coming from one producing company of the wire, the machine runs. When the wire is coming from the other, from China, for example, it breaks. And no one can explain why.
But
And
the other thing is true too.
You can handle such concepts.
You can buy sensors from Germany and they are like really good, right? But if I want sensors, I buy them from China because they're really shitty, right? And then I get the best return. It's funny how that works, right?
Yeah, it's an interesting story.
Maybe for Fatima, you did a questionnaire design for that one. Because you have this pilot research. Did you have a model behind your questionnaire design? What kind of questions you want to design so that you want to get a certain kind of data? I didn't see the model. Because you see the same thing for their sensor design. Like when you have a sensor, what do you want to sense? Like what kind of things you want to see?
Actually, our study in the beginning, we were not planning to have this interrogation actually. The plan was to just look into the literature, study, and then realize what's really the best. But then we had the idea that let's go to the practice, ask the people directly of what they do this, and then complement it with what is in the literature in the existing theories. So actually, first we wanted to know if our participants are directly engaged in designing life switch or not. Because actually we found a lot of papers in the literature talking about the beginning of life, the end of life, but the middle of life, that it's really rich, doesn't have that much importance in the literature. And also I'm part of Falcon project, 2020, and the focus is on how to really use middle of life data and take advantage of it. So actually it's a rich one. So then we wanted to make designers really know what they can really take from it. And
Yeah,
then
maybe you should sort of classify it as a midlife crisis. Then might
so actually the middle of life data is the data that is collected during the use of the product, and the product is already being used by the customer, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's the use data, but for some products it's also characterized as the maintenance data and the service data. So it can be, if the product has sensor, it can be directly taken from that product, and it's generally like a huge amount of data is generated every single day if we consider one product, but also it can be considered, it can be collected from the log files. It can be also, because for some companies there is that phone calls that's like you call to make a claim or complain about something, and then there are a lot of, they register these calls. I know that because actually we're working on this project with Philips Healthcare, and talking about the non-structured data or the unstructured data, Philips is everywhere in the world, and actually when they receive these calls, everyone wrote it in his own, by his own understanding and in his own language. So when I received the file, it was like, I mean, a lot of languages were in there that was really impossible to, yeah.
I had directly to your work and question. I think it was very interesting, and I think if you asked designers what they want to have, quick, easy to use, and exact results.
Flexible.
But you are on the other side of the desk. In my opinion, there could be also another strategy. Maybe it is better to make a specialized department for data analysis who handle all this stuff, and maths and so on. And the designer is going to them and say, hi, I want to know this from the data. And not optimize the tools, because in my opinion, we do also a lot in finite elements.
Yeah.
One of the critical point, what happens in the last years, is make FEM calculation easy in CAD. Because now designers who have no idea of what happened behind that on complex theory, use it, generate nice pictures, and then they decide. And we did the test. We did the test. The values are the same. We just changed the color. We changed high strings in green and low strings in red. And they did the wrong decision. They did the wrong decision. And maybe, and this big data analysis is the next step, more complex. Maybe it is not a good idea to give all this stuff to the designers directly.
Actually, one of the questions that we asked in the interrogation was that, do you prefer to do the analysis?
Yes.
That is the model.
It's a nice design, but it doesn't work.
Great strings in green.
So actually, one of the questions that we asked the designers that, do you want to do the analysis yourself, or do you prefer someone who is expert in data analytics and who can do the job for you? And then we realized actually that the majority of them said that this is what already happens, is that in their companies, it's the, how they call them, data analysts who are doing the analysis. But the problem that they do have is that they don't trust if these people knows what kind of patterns they are searching. So they said because they are data analysts, they have their own patterns, and designers to enhance, they have their own patterns. So this is why they said that we prefer to have a tool that's flexible, that we can use ourselves, that can do quite a lot of things. But this question, it was really asked to the designers.
There's also a danger.
Maybe it's a better idea to, as I always say, see the human in the middle of the production. Maybe it's better that the designer discuss a little bit with the data analysis, and then he will get the right things.
Yeah, that's why in our future work we are thinking more, even if like they're more into interfacing, but what our objective since the beginning of the PhD is to see how we can make that system or the data analytics tool smart in a way that they can understand based on what the products are there, what kind of designer we have, what kind of analysis the product can, the data analytic tool can propose to them.
See, Fatima, the problem with designers, we are designers, okay? We design, okay? Then we like it. And then we want data to validate that that is okay. Okay? It happens. If you don't get the real data to support your things, I will look for some more things. This is the biggest problem because data are available, I find. Like suppose while doing an automobile design, I will create a new form. Okay? After creating the form, I want to say that its coefficient of air friction is very low. Okay? Then I will try to find it out how it is low, and then I will tell you, okay, you justify and what I need to change. So there it becomes, because designers are also impulsive, designers think about aesthetics. Aesthetics is very difficult to justify with your data. No? Now eye tracking is coming, eye tracking also can betray you. So it's a very difficult situation. If the moment you will be able to get all the data for designers, and then you don't need any more designer in the world. So this is what is like your dress, my dress, everything we'll create first, and then we'll try to find it out. Okay, does it satisfy? So that's why they wanted to understand the interface. They wanted to know how you can find it out and why it justifies. Yeah, that is where we are always in a problem.
And also, well, their decisions, I believe that they're subjective in a way, is
Yes.
that they don't trust the data as it is.
Exactly.
They have already an idea what they really want to change.
Exactly, and that comes up
they
in
look
your
for it.
mind. Yeah, that comes up in their mind for a long time, and they want justification that it is right. So that will remain, and that's why they come up with lots of forms and functions, and finally you get new product completed. Like these things, like somebody has to tell that how much load you can put that it will come out. But He has
It's not for dynamic programming. Okay.
I have a remark on the work of my colleague here. I think he has a great point because of the smartphone use. I use a smartphone when I bike. And the other day I misjudged a car that was coming round the bend, but actually it was 2 bends from me. But I was driving along a small river in Holland, and the water sort of carried sound, and I was sort of misplacing the sound in my orientation, so I crashed onto the asphalt. So he has a very great invention, I think. If I could have had a cue or something, then I would, would have been more notified, and I might be able to swerve or something. It's interesting, yeah.
These days, 25% fatalities in the Netherlands are cyclists on the roads.
Yeah.
So every 4th person who dies is a cyclist.
Yeah.
So the accuracy part, how can you improve the accuracy of the identification and detection? That's a very important, because you don't, if you give a false detection, it will not be very.
I think the key point will be identification in real world application. If you have a car in real traffic, then you have several cars.
That's definitely a
And
feature.
it's possible, right? It's feasible what he's doing, I think.
It's a proof of concept, it works. And if he also has some machine learning and will test it, then it should work in city environment as well.
There's some question.
Maybe consider, of course, obviously far future, having something where all of the cell phones that are running the app kind of cooperate to give you situational awareness, because they've done something similar with identifying where gunshots come from. So, to place the location of the gunshots. You could do something similar. Of course, the batteries are a problem and all of that data usage, but, cooperating apps to provide, more accurate locations of the cars.
Similar to vehicle-to-vehicle interactions in autonomous cars.
Or a self-driving bike, and I can stay home.
Like a traveler measurement has to get the 3 units self to help you.
Yeah, I do have a question for you as well.
Yeah.
Did you consider the alertness? Because I do have friends working on something similar, but they want for cars. And sometimes they're like the viewer, the system, or our viewing system takes some time to be aware and alerted of the situation. There are some things that may appear like suddenly. So, did you consider this kind of facts? I mean, if you just cross in like the street and like you just arrive, so for your system it takes a few seconds until it passed by. So you're considering this going this way or also coming the other way. But what if something just happened?
Something if you have half a second to react, most people will not have enough time to react. So something it's more for situations which could be avoided if you could hear the car.
Because I heard that you're talking about the Google Pro. So if it's on the side, it can also have the angle of the whole thing. And in this case, I
in our system, it's aimed at the microphones of the smart. The GoPro was more for representation of the actual lens. So the end result is usually just a microphone.
Oh, it's always
Okay, I think it's a very interesting discussion. Thank you for all for your presentations and the questions. Let's conclude this demonstration.